Well, I was playing Wang Hao with white, so I was expecting this line as well. Because I played fluff here 2 times already, so it gets easier to prepare with rounds. Well, he always chooses this interesting move order to get to a theoretical line, which is supposed to be well, giving white a slight plus, but it's also considered very solid and played by Yakovenko, who is always very solid. Well, the idea of bishop b4 is to avoid bishop b2 later on. Well, now knight takes d5 as a threat, so he has to draw the bishop back or play queen e7. And here, I think the main move is e4, but I decided to experiment with rook e1. Perhaps preparing e4, or just make a useful move and seeing what he can do. Well, here a lot of moves deserve attention. For example, h6 is possible, but he played the new move dc, bc, and b6. I think it's a very rare concept to give up the center, because normally I had the feeling white wants this, but it does make some sense. I mean, if he would develop c5 bishop b7, he may get normal play. Well, here I had a lot of options, but I chose for rook b1 with the idea to avoid bishop b7, c5, and if he goes c5 first, I have a lot of options, but I might have played the a4 as well with the idea a5. And if he goes a5, then b5 square is weak, so perhaps after following a5, I had the idea that white should get advantage, but I'm not sure. So he played another move, queen c7, to stay more flexible. Yes, and now I decided to go a4 anyway, because I didn't see what else to do, otherwise bishop e7 would be played. And here he could have gone against c5, but then a5, so it's logical to prevent it. Yeah, and here I thought for a very long time, because I was first I underestimated the move that I played, and I was calculating knight e2 for a long time with the idea to, well, that after c5 I can always go back, so it's not a good move. And otherwise he should play bishop e7 or bishop a6, which is maybe even more unpleasant. And now after e4, e5, I was calculating some lines, for example like this one, and now f4, e5, it doesn't work because of check, followed by knight g4, and if bishop e3, preparing e5 and attacking the pawn, what I first thought looks good for me. Here he can play knight g4, and if I take, he's going to sacrifice his queen, I thought, and yeah, it looks like he's going to grab more material than... Although I actually see I missed it after king f1, the knight on g4 is hanging, but perhaps knight takes h2 check, and then take should be fine for black, with probably big advantage. But I mean, these lines were quite attractive for white, because it seems like black was holding with only moves, so I was trying to make all these things work. Also, for example, here it's interesting to play just, it's like this, yeah, f4, bishop e6, h3. But then, for example, I had a problem that if he goes here, king h1, then he has rook d8, and if rook b3, with a, well, then he can take, even take on e4, and after king h2, with the idea that knight e4 after, well, the same line wouldn't work for him, but now he has maybe queen e7, and e5 he can give a check. So these kind of ideas. And also strategically it's very dangerous, so I was not sure if I should go for it, although it did seem quite attractive. And also it was interesting here, I was almost going for it to play bishop g5. Well, with the idea that somehow I want to take on f6 perhaps already. and the b6 pawn will hang later on, but I was not sure if, for example, pawn is here. If, for example, this position is good for me, and again I have some risk to end up worse once, so I thought that it wasn't so clear. So after long thinking, I thought knight e4 was another option, because well, otherwise bishop b4, and I'm not sure if it's so good for black, because I can anyway play some move, but then at least he can play some position like this. I'm not so sure if it's something big for white. But here, to be honest, I first thought it's not so much for me, but then I realized that it's quite a lot. Queen is here already, so I realized it's quite enough at least to fight for advantage, because the main idea is...
Anish, could you just go one step
yeah.
to the side?
Well... well, the idea is that I want to avoid positions like, let's say, what he wants to get is perhaps something like this. And then, although this square is sort of vulnerable, he has activity. So I had to avoid this. And I thought of, sort of found a way to avoid it, because he can play immediate knight f6 now. Oh, but then it doesn't make too much sense, because otherwise, because I can play even queen b3 here. Or the problem with knight f6 is that I have e4. So he cannot make this regroupment. So after bishop b7 I play queen c2. And what I first, what I initially didn't see was c5, but once I saw it I immediately went knight e4, because now I have simply c5. And actually whatever happens, I have big attack. Well, knight e4, queen e4, bishop c5 is probably losing on the spot, but more clever is to play bishop takes c5. And here I for some time couldn't find the way, but this clears, for example, even bishop c3. I think it was my final conclusion. Even this is extremely dangerous for black. The bishop is being stupid, and always knight g5 jumping in. So after he couldn't regroup, I realized that I probably have a very, very pleasant advantage. And he played a rook b8. Well, h6 was played first, I mean, instead of knight f6, because of c5. But here, okay, I still have to avoid knight f6 and c5, so I played the bishop c3. And again, knight f6, c5 leads to some sort of position like this. So, but now I win by force with. I mean, I can play on queen g4, but I at least win with rook takes b7 and queen e5 and double attack. So knight f6 again is not possible, because as I said, if I would have to do this, he's fine. So he so he tried. Well, he doesn't have any move else, so he played rook a b8. Half useful move, half not. And here I might have. Well, I played rook e d1 almost immediately, because he still cannot play knight f6, and well, as long as he can do it, he's worse. Although also, what was possible is h3 probably, because he probably still cannot play knight f6 because of against c5 and some complicated stuff. Actually, I even think I saw why it's not possible. Because he can take, and I have a very surprising move here, queen e5. And actually I win an exchange, and it's not lost, but it's very problematic for black. So I mean, I could make any move here already, and h3 was a move that was in my plan. And in the game I even thought maybe it was more precise, because I already want to play knight d2, and the knight d2 is sort of a move that was in my plan. So h3 would deserve attention, but anyway, rook d1 was fine. And here I expected a move like rook d8, because I didn't see, again, knight f6 wasn't working for simple reasons. So I was expecting move rook d8, and then I thought I can play h3, and let's say a new move, and I can go knight d2. And then I'm already threatening perhaps c5 somewhere, and he still can play c5, and I can play bishop f3 and whatever move. Also for, yeah, well, h3, yes, this was my intention here. But he played bishop a6. Perhaps it's, well, he probably realized that if he's going to stand and wait, it's not going to end well. And here I had a few options. Although here I realized I was a bit regretting I didn't play h3 because I can play knight d2, but still I can play simple move bishop d3, or I thought perhaps it's useful to give a check and drop this one here. And well, probably his intention were not f5 that he played, because it's unlikely. Such move can be a part of a plan. But the problem is that I think he just can't play this move. This was maybe what he thought. Because I have e4 simply, and e5 I'm taking everything and the pawn will be hanging at the end. Somehow it took me some time to realize that the pawn will be hanging. But as long as I realized it, I was very happy with my position. And otherwise he can play c5. But then I can just play d5, and the position is very unpleasant. I mean, I was thinking like he might play like this, and but well, he can play knight e5, and even if he could, this pawn will be very strong. And otherwise, these weaknesses are also going to tell. And the king, well, it's clearly better for it for any reason. So he didn't play c5 either. And it turns out that probably his position was already quite bad after the opening. I mean, I didn't see what else he got played, so maybe his whole idea is not so good. And here actually he set a very clever trap, because I almost fell for it. I wanted to play c5, bishop d3, queen d3, because initially I was thinking press c5 was a threat, but of course cd, bishop c2 is nothing. But I was thinking that this position would lead to a nearly winning advantage for me. And now if it takes with queen and rook, it seems like dc is going to win the piece. So I was considering knight takes b8, take, bishop takes, and let's say queen c4, and it all starts hanging, and oh, disastrous for black, I think. But the problem was that in fact he can take with rook, seems like, and then he can take with knight, and if I win the piece, he's going to play knight e4, and it seems like basically he's sort of escaping with the draw, because I cannot save my piece. And well, so I thought that was very clever of him to set such trap. But okay, once I saw this, I was happy that.
It's behind the rook.
Behind which one? Yes. Well, there's one more rook. Yeah, so this one is here, I suppose. And d5, that didn't seem too strong either, because, well, it's impossible. I mean, he could take and play e5, or there's a lot of options, but I think it leads to some advantage for white, probably. But I thought it maybe makes more sense to play first g3 with idea knight h4, and it will just also sort of seems not so bad, because once the bishop left b7, I'm not really worrying about long diagonal anymore. And here actually I was expecting knight f6, and I don't think it's easy. It's so easy. Although knight f6 is weakening a little bit control of c5 and b6, but I didn't see how to exploit it. Maybe there is a simple way, but